Hello, greetings from Brookings, India, New Delhi, to the participants of the International Symposium on Society and Resource Management 2020. Thanks are due to the International Association for Society and Natural Resources for organizing this event despite difficulties faced on account of COVID-19. I am Rajesh Chadha, Program Director, Natural Resources, Brookings, India, and Ganesh Sivamani is my colleague and co-author on this paper, which is work in progress. The work program on non-fuel minerals and mining in India commenced at Brookings, India in September 2019, less than 10 months ago. Let me begin with the outline of the work we are doing on the non-fuel minerals and mining in India. We are working on three strands: positive economics, international good practices, and normative economics. We are also looking at why does India lag behind and what are the linkages of the mining sectors with other sectors of the economy. In fact, post-leasing clearance mechanism also needs to be reformed in various phases, and more recently, post-COVID, the critical mineral supply chain where India needs to assert will also be discussed. The way forward, actions and pending reforms would be my last part of the presentation. The broad agenda of the work program deals with positive economics, which talks about exploration, allocation, extraction, regulation, royalties, and taxation issues. International good practices, where we are comparing India's mining regulation and sector with developed countries including Australia and Canada, and developing countries like Chile, Mexico, Brazil, and South Africa. The third part, that is normative economics, we are looking at the issues relating to environment, local communities, cooperative mining, SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, and mine closure. So, in the framework of our understanding and analysis, the first important point that we notice is that India lags behind as far as its non-fuel mining and mineral sectors are concerned. India produces 88 non-fuel minerals, including 10 metallic minerals. The share is large for the minor minerals, whereas it is only 30% for iron ore and about 10% for other metallic minerals. The share in the gross value added national income is less than 1% from the non-fuel mining sector, which is much smaller than many other comparator countries. India has a great potential of mineral resources, but has not been able to convert these resources into reserves. Mineral resources are generally discovered during the exploration phase and have potential value with reasonable prospects for eventual economic extraction. On the other hand, mineral reserves are economically mineralable part of the estimated valuable mineral resources, which are legally feasible to be extracted economically and technically. So this clearly shows that there is a lot to be done as far as further exploration and resources to be converted into reserves. Looking at this information about the number of exploration companies and exploration budget of 2015, it can be clearly seen that India has very little being spent on exploration, and in 2015 there were about 7 to 8 companies doing exploration in India and the budget less than $50 million. This is much less compared to South Africa and Indonesia, and of course compared to Chile and Peru. There is no comparison with what is being spent and explored as far as Canada and Australia are concerned. The Fraser Institute in Canada conducts a survey of the mining companies with regard to an investment attractiveness index which is constructed by combining the best practices mineral potential index which rates regions based on their geological attractiveness, and the Policy Perception Index, which is a composite index that measures the effects of government policy on attitudes towards exploration investment. India stood quite low, in fact, the lowest in this group of mining jurisdictions and countries in 2016. It got dropped off later due to lack of number of responses. A lot needs to be done as far as India's mining sector is concerned. And now I invite my colleague and co-author to make presentation on the next two sections, that is mining sector's linkages with other sectors of the economy as well as the post-leasing clearance mechanism to improve mining regulation.
Thank you. I shall begin by discussing the linkages of the mining sectors with other sectors of the Indian economy. The Input-Output Transactions Table, or IO table, is an inter-industry transactions matrix which represents the interdependencies as well as the final demand of various sectors in an economy. Some of the uses of the IO table include calculating multipliers of various sectors. In economics, a multiplier refers to a change in one economic variable due to a change in another variable. The IO table may also be used for computable general equilibrium modeling, which helps estimate how an economy would react to change in policy. In India, the most recent input-output table was published by the Ministry of Statistics and Program Implementation for the years 2007-8. Since then, only supply and use tables have been published. Understanding the economic linkages of the mining sector is useful, and so we decided to compute the input-output table for 2015-16. Using the latest supply and use tables, 2015-16, we constructed a 131 sector input-output table. As can be seen on the right side of the screen, there are 8 non-fuel mining sectors and 3 fuel mining sectors in the Indian IO table. The transaction flows shows the input structure of the mining sector, as well as the uses of the ores in manufacturing sectors. Multipliers were calculated using the input-output tables, and on the screen are the various output multipliers for the mining sectors in the Indian economy. An output multiplier is defined as the ratio of the change in direct and indirect output to the change in direct output due to a 1 unit increase in final use in the given sector. Similarly, gross value added multipliers were computed. The GVA is the value of output minus the value of input and represents the incomes paid to the factors of production. I will now discuss post-leasing clearance mechanisms in India and suggestions on how to improve mining regulations in the country. Regulation in the mining sector in India can be classified under 4 broad sectors. 1. The Ministry of Mines and state mining departments are responsible for granting mineral concessions and permits. 2. The Indian Bureau of Mines works on mineral conservation and development, including mine closures. 3. State governments, district administration, and Panchayati Raj, or local government, looks into displacement and rehabilitation issues. And 4, which will be the focus of this section, will be green clearances. This is managed by the Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change, as well as allied agencies and state and district authorities. Green licenses refer to both environmental and social licenses. This is a very important issue in India, given how much of the mineral wealth is found in environmentally sensitive areas, which are also usually densely populated by impoverished and marginalized communities. The purpose of green licenses is to manage the pollution, the impacts on forestry, wildlife, and environment, as well as mitigating externalities, is to manage the impact on human health, and also to manage the loss of livelihoods, as many of the people live off the land. So some of the major clearances and permits required to begin mining operations includes the environmental clearances, which includes the public hearing based on environmental impacts. Then you have the forest clearances, which uses the village consultation for forest diversion and settlement of forest rights. Next is the wildlife clearance, which is subject to recommendation by the National Board of Wildlife. And finally, the consent to operate, which is renewable every 5 years. I want to discuss 2 issues with the current clearance and permit mechanism. First, the assessment process is fragmented. Currently, there is no comprehensive assessment document for all major clearances. authorities look into various documents which make assessment process quite complex. For example, for the environmental clearance, you require a environmental impact assessment report. For forest clearance, you require site inspections and various forms. And the wildlife clearance requires a biodiversity section in the environmental impact assessment report, as well as further studies if recommended by the National Board of Wildlife. Now you have various authorities looking at various documents, which is all based on one piece of land which is going to be affected. This causes issues in accountability. The second major issue is the issue with compliance monitoring. Currently, there are only 10 regional Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change offices which monitor thousands of projects and the environmental and forest clearance compliance. There's a similar deficiency of capacity within the state pollution control boards. Each clearance comes with a long set of measures companies have to comply with and authorities have to monitor. For example, there are between 45 and 50 conditions for the environmental and forest clearances each, and an additional 10 to 15 for the consent to operate. Additionally, there is a lack of availability of self-reported bi-yearly compliance reports by mining companies. Only 30% of compliance reports are available for iron ore mining projects cleared since 2014. I will now briefly discuss some of the ways to improve the current clearance mechanism. Firstly, there is a need to have one integrated comprehensive report for environmental, forest, wildlife, and social impact, as well as the steps the companies will take for mitigation of these externalities. Clearances should then be considered based on this one comprehensive document. There is also a need to increase the capacity of the various authorities so that the compliance monitoring is improved. Finally, improving the coordination between ministries as well as the centers and state governments will also help strengthen green clearances.
One of the important issues concerns with the critical or strategic minerals supply chain, particularly post COVID-19. The criticality of a non-fuel mineral can be evaluated through considering its economic importance and the supply side risk. Many of the high value add manufacturing industries might need only small quantities of certain minerals, say lithium, silicon, niobium, or rare earths. Further, there may be supply constraints. Such minerals are referred to as critical or strategic minerals. The critical minerals have highly complex global supply chains. For example, China produces 63% of world's output of rare earth elements. More than 70% of cobalt is mined in the Democratic Republic of Congo, with China having a majority ownership of these mines. Australia produces 55% of world's lithium, with China as its major importer. And South Africa mines about 72% of world's platinum outputs. So, what's the way forward for India's mining sector growth? What are the actions and pending reforms? Linking it to the previous slide, critical mineral supply chains need to be developed on urgent basis because these are required for high value added sectors and for sectors like batteries, solar panels, IT equipment, which include computers and mobile phones, aviation, and space research. In order to make India self-reliant, the government has come out with a set of mining reforms, which include introduction of a seamless composite exploration cum mining cum production regime. 500 mining blocks would be offered through an open and transparent auction process, and introduction of joint auction of bauxite and coal mineral blocks to enhance the aluminum industry's competitiveness. Further, remove the distinction between captive and non-captive mines, and commercial mining of coal has been permitted. Taking the discussion on making India self-reliant, the government has announced promotion of some champion sectors of manufacturing. Many of these would require critical and strategic minerals. A joint venture company, Khanij Videsh India Limited, has been set up with participation of three public sector companies. The major objective is to ensure a consistent supply of critical minerals to India's manufacturing sector. India and Australia have recently signed one MOU for supply of critical minerals to India. Investments shall be encouraged in clean energy technologies. And finally, the need to have a single regulatory authority, as was mentioned in the National Minerals Policy 2019, is urgent and important. We wish to end our presentation with the mining vision statement we have documented. A globally competitive and self-reliant sustainable mining hub, India must ensure mineral security for the 21st century, provide intergenerationally optimum resources to the state's exchequers and adequate returns to the mining companies, rely on state-of-the-art technology and create additional jobs, while ensuring environmental sustainability and welfare of the affected communities. Thank you for your attention. Have a nice day.